Oh, what there, my pedigree chums? Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here, and after a whole season spent with my heart singing its one true song that I thought Arsenal would win the league, here it is. This is the why Arsenal didn't win the league video, and that's the entire intro. Alright, so the very short answer why this team did not win the Premier League is, of course, Manchester City. Now, whether you regard that answer as being the product of a generational coach like Pep Guardiola pulling together an era-defining squad of players and managing them near faultlessly, or you regard it as something that's inevitably going to be settled in a court of law and several prosecutions, that's down to you, but it doesn't change the answer. But the thing is, this Arsenal team here actually went undefeated against Manchester City in 3 games this season. 2 wins and a draw. In fact, they went undefeated against the entire traditional top 6 this season, so it's not that Man City side, man for man, were better. In fact, if you go back and watch the Arsenal versus Man City games from this season and compare them to the Arsenal versus Man City games from last season, you could very easily make the argument that this team didn't just improve when compared to City, they actually surpassed them. And this isn't really going to be the thrust of the video, but I just want to illustrate this point with 2 very, very, very useful clips, right? The previous season, Arsenal simply had no idea how to contain Manchester City. They were getting pulled all over the place. They were their playthings. But the way they refined the system and the way they added players to the squad, the way they evolved from one season to the other, meant that all of a sudden, they could contain Manchester City. Like, this is them keeping them completely penned in just sort of 12 months later. So why then? Why wasn't that enough? Why did Man City still finish 2 points ahead of this squad? Where did it somehow fall apart for them? Well, I have been back through the entire season, and I will tell you right now, the problem was Declan Rice. No, I'm joking. I'm kidding. I'm not. It's not Declan Rice's fault at all. I'm not blaming him. This isn't one of those channels, is it? Get out of the comments, right? The problem was actually this sort of like sitting number 6 position that he was in, and Arteta sort of knew he had to make a change, but he didn't really, I don't know if he didn't trust himself or he was a bit hesitant and he was a bit slow in doing it and it all kind of fell apart. Look, I'll explain. So Arsenal in 2024 went on an absolutely unbelievable run. From the first game of the year right the way through the finish, they dropped 4 points. They had 1 draw and 1 defeat, and everything else was a win. And the thing is, people will focus in on that 2-0 loss to Aston Villa as where it got away from them, but the fact is, you are allowed 1 draw and 1 defeat in 18 games and still win the league. Like, that wouldn't even be league-winning form, that would be record-breaking league-winning form. Where the focus really needs to be is in December, because after hanging on against Wolves and stealing a last-minute winner against Luton Town, Arsenal then failed to win 4 of their next 5 games. Like, Aston Villa and Liverpool are good sides who were both in great form at the time, so that can happen, but defeats to both Fulham and West Ham simply cannot. And if we look at Arsenal's most used 11 in 2024, where their form has been more or less untouchable, and we compare that to the 11 they used most in that December, you can see one key, very important difference. Declan Rice was, at the time, still being used as Arsenal's main pivot player. He was the one receiving the ball off the back line. He was the one passing it first into midfield, trying to break the lines, trying to orchestrate the play, and it just didn't work. Like, this is the starting lineup when they got beat against Aston Villa. This is the starting lineup when they drew with Liverpool. This is the starting lineup when they got beat off West Ham. And this is the starting lineup when they got beat off Fulham. And for a team that went on to average something like nearly 3 goals a game all season, they only got 2 in these 4 games, and that just was awful. And we talked about it at the time here on the channel. You could see majorly what the problem was. Teams were low blocking Arsenal, denying them the space, and using Declan Rice in this role when you need a player to find those passes between the lines to split defenses. It just wasn't his game. He kept going from side to side. He kept going from left to right. He was playing safe passes when they needed, it's the word I want, dangerous ones. And you're never going to see a better example of a problem in football than this. Like, this is Declan Rice's pass map from one of those games, I forget which, and he's just so rarely able to move it forward through dangerous areas. It's constantly going side to side. It's constantly going to the flanks. There's no incision, there's no cutting edge. And I think genuinely when Arteta looks back at this season, something he will majorly regret about this period of games is that in all of them, Jorginho sat on the bench as an unused substitute. He didn't even get a go. And as absolutely anybody who watched Arsenal this season will tell you, when he did finally trust him in this role with Rice as the left side number 8 and Havertz up front, Arsenal just looked so much more dangerous. Like, Porto were able to stonewall them in the first leg, but they went with this approach in the second leg and cut clean through them. Now, we could break the reasons for this down into all manner of statistical minutiae, but if I just show you side by side Rice's passing statistics from the Premier League this season and Jorginho's passing statistics from the Premier League this season, you'll see they're both excellent passers of the ball. There's not much difference there, is there? But for every single one of these numbers that accounts for breaking the opposition down, for making the kind of passes they're trying to stop you making, Jorginho doesn't just shade Rice, he's way ahead of him. And okay, you might be looking at that going, it's not miles better at him, it's only like a couple of percentage points here or once or twice more per match there, but like, when teams are trying to stop you playing through them, that once or twice per match could be the once or twice that gets you the goal that wins the game. Like, trust me, that is huge. But the reason I think Arteta will regret how he handled this run of games so much is because this Jorginho thing wasn't some, like, solution he just stumbled across at this part of the season. It wasn't something the 3 ghosts visited him in a dream at Christmas and told him to do. He already knew from the very first game that this is kind of how he wanted to play. You go all the way back to the Community Shield, Arsenal's first game of the season, the one where we all started to believe they could actually do it. And this was the starting 11. Declan Rice was not being used as the number 6. He was the left-sided number 8 already. And if I'm remembering this rightly, I do think that caught a lot of people off guard. Like, I certainly assumed they brought him in to play him here, not to play him here. And yet, if we look at his heat map from that day, obviously he's doing a lot of work in front of the back 4. You're playing against Manchester City. You've got to have that discipline. But he's also able to get into this half space, into this channel, to affect the attacking play, to get himself into the box. Now, obviously, the injury to Thomas Partey forced them to have a rethink here. But what's even crazier about the Jorginho situation is his first solution wasn't just to put Rice there. He did give him a run in this position in the team early on. Now, early on in the season, you may remember Arsenal had Manchester City at home and Chelsea away, which, if you want to win the title, is a fairly decisive set of back-to-back fixtures. And with Partey injured, Rice did not play here. Arteta still wanted him here. And here is the moment that I think ultimately cost Arsenal the league, right? Because this system with Jorginho in it worked in both of those games, right? But crucially, also, no, it didn't. It was the introduction of Kai Havertz in both of these matches that, first of all, allowed them to get the winning goal against Manchester City, and then later brought them back from 2-0 against Chelsea. And I think, and admittedly I don't know, you'd have to ask Arteta yourself, but I honestly think that in this part of the season, something happened in his brain. He saw how important Kai Havertz was going to be for the rest of the season and knew he had to find a way to include him in his starting 11. But he didn't want to bin 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗓 or Jesus. He didn't want to get rid of the centre forward for him. So instead, he sacrificed Jorginho. He put Rice in at the number 6, put Havertz in at the left side at number 8, and decided to go with that. And thus, if we go back to those 4 starting 11s where it all went wrong for Arsenal this season, you will see in 3 out of those 4, that's exactly what he did. Declan Rice, the number 6, Kai Havertz, the left side at number 8, and a proper centre-forward. In fact, the only game he didn't play there was the West Ham match when he was suspended. So I think we can reasonably assume that it would have been 4 out of 4 if he'd been available. And after that Fulham defeat, Arsenal were 4th in the table. It looked like it was slipping away from them. Arteta went back to the drawing board, assessed that Havertz wasn't the problem. He still needed him in the side somewhere, restored Jorginho, pushed Rice further forward, and allowed him to play up front. And wouldn't you just know it, he only went and cracked it from that Fulham game onwards, where Arsenal only dropped 4 points across the season. Kai Havertz started all but 3 of those as the centre-forward, not the left-sided number 8. And also double, wouldn't you just know it, one of those games he started as the left-sided number 8 was the defeat to Aston Villa, where again, Arsenal just did not look right. And honestly, I think that is why Arsenal didn't win the league this season. Like, clearly Arteta knew the best way to utilise this midfield from the very first game of the season, but just that injury to Thomas Partey and knowing he had to get Kai Havertz in there somewhere, but just doing it in the wrong way initially, those are the margins. And it is just margins, by the way. Like, I cannot stress enough how 89 points should be enough to win you the Premier League title. I mean, for fuck's sake, it was literally the points total Man City got last season when they won the Premier League title. Like, here is a graph The Athletic did of all the points tallies from all the Premier League winners. This is where Arsenal come on that graph. 89 points plus 62 goal difference. Arsenal would have been champions in 16 of the last 28 seasons. In fact, if you were to gather all the Infinity Stones and wish to erase Pep Guardiola from time itself, I think there's only like 4 seasons Arsenal wouldn't have won the league with that points total. It's not fair, but that's just what they're up against. And while I'm here, can we just talk about the word bottle, please? Like, I know I'm not really talking to you. I know you're fairly normal and sensible. This is mostly just for lads who have, like, footballers as their Twitter avatar and have never seen a living human breast in their entire life. But just, this is not what bottling a season looks like. Bottling something is when you are in complete control of it and you somehow lose your mind and throw it away, right? At the halfway point of the season, despite that bad run of games Arsenal had, they were level on points with Manchester City. And then in the second half, City just got 2 more points. And because of the fact City had to play that weird tournament in the middle of the season, they were always games behind Arsenal. So while Arsenal did have more points and were top for long stretches, they were never really in control of it. The fact is, they upped their levels from last season to get nearer to a points total that would win it. It's just that Man City, despite weirdly not looking anywhere near as good as they did last season, managed to up theirs as well. I think, honestly, this was the best side in the Premier League this season. And yeah, I know you can just sit there and be like, well, if it was the best side, Adam, why did another side manage to get more points than they did? And you're absolutely, I've got no comeback for that. You are absolutely correct. You win absolutely nothing for me saying, oh, I thought they were good though. But I did think they were good, though. I thought they deserved to win the league. Now, of course, the really big question is, can they regroup? Can they go again? Can they up these levels once more? Or potentially just capitalise on Man City's dropping ever so slightly? And we will answer that another day. In the meantime, though, if you have enjoyed this video, Arsenal fans, we have done so many on you guys this season because you have been by a mile the most tactically interesting team in the Premier League. And of course, that will still be the case next season, I assume. So please do subscribe to us here on FourFourTwo and you won't miss any of those. And of course, if you just like reading stuff, because who doesn't? Pretend I caught that. This is the latest issue of FourFourTwo. It is the Euros preview edition. And oh yeah, speaking of the Euros, we will be covering the ever-loving snot out of that. So another reason to click that lovely button. You can get me on all the socials at Adam Clery, Clery. That's there. The FourFourTwo socials are in the corner of the video. And look, I would just like to know how Arsenal fans feel about all of this, because it must be absolutely gutting. But days have passed now, many, many days, so you should be feeling more normal. So in the comments below, please, we would like to gauge the mood of Arsenal fans. Did you deserve to win it? Did you not deserve to win it? Will you win it next year? How are you feeling? What needs to change? All thoughts, all feelings, all comments, absolutely welcome. Until next time, I think that's every single thing I've got to hit on my signing off the video checklist. And if not, it's too late to go back and check now. So, bye. Bye. Sorry, Arsenal fans. Sorry, I thought you'd do it. I did, but that's how it goes. Bye.